FM News Talk 97.1.
On-demand audio.
Our regular Monday guest, you know him, Stephen Yates, is a foreign policy expert at the D.C. International Advisory. You can find him online at DC Advisory or DCIadvisory.org, I believe. Yes. Stephen, good afternoon to you. Happy Monday, sir.
Hi, Dana. It's good to be with you.
It's good to talk with you. There's so much happening at this point right now. And first and foremost, some of the things that we have discussed, in the past several weeks have been this administration's, endorsement of the Muslim Brotherhood in Egypt. Now we're hearing stories of those supporters of the Egyptian president-elect, I suppose, Morsi, the Muslim Brotherhood candidate, crucifying opposition and those who dissent with his policy, his platform, etc. They're crucifying people. They're nailing them to things over there. What have you heard about this? And if true, why haven't we heard anything from the Obama White House on this?
Well, I've only heard what you have heard. I've seen a lot of reporting, and there have been a number of experts that have been warning that there are these extremists that had infiltrated the system there, and space had been created for them to feel a little bit more active by the ascension of the Muslim Brotherhood to power. It's incredibly distressing to see reports like this. I mean, there are few things more brutal that are done than this kind of a crucifixion. And I think there's only an unflattering explanation for why there's very little talk from this administration. I mean, really, there is only one world religion that receives a defense from this administration. It's not Christianity. It's not Judaism.
Right, exactly. And this is, I'm not quite sure why no one really, well, I don't expect anyone in the media to, but even people in the conservative sphere of things, Stephen, because this is the candidate that was effectively endorsed by this administration. And now you have this violence, the violence that was said to have, it was supposed to go away with his election. Well, now it's back and it's, it's never really gone away, but they're crucifying people. And it just seems to me that association should really be hammered home. I mean, is that a fair correlation to make?
Well, I think it's fair to certainly raise the questions. I think if one wanted to try to defend Morsi, I don't usually, but if one wanted to, you could say, well, these people's behavior is not necessarily his behavior, but it is his ultimate responsibility to disassociate from the groups that are doing this. I mean, he is a member of that group, and so it's all the more important for him to exercise some authority and get control. And if these kinds of really awful things are being done, you'd think that the White House, at the very least, might call into question whether they're going to proceed with inviting him.
Right, absolutely. I want to switch this up and ask you about a story that recently came to light last week. This is a huge story, and we haven't really. I don't believe that the president has been asked about this yet. He gave his first press conference. It took questions from the press corps rather today for the first time in 8 weeks. There were reports of a Russian submarine which had been patrolling the Gulf of Mexico, and for several weeks apparently, and we were completely unaware that it was even down there until after it left. Now, Texas Senator John Cornyn has demanded. He wrote a letter to the chief of naval operations asking what has happened. We need an investigation into this. Why didn't we know? I mean, this was a nuclear sub. What is the story behind this, Stephen?
Well, the senator is absolutely correct to be pressing for answers and inquiring into the situation. The Pentagon spokesperson has denied the accuracy of the reports, which is not the same thing as saying it didn't happen. It's just denying the accuracy of the reports.
Right.
They're on one level, it's deeply distressing that this kind of a thing could happen. If the reports are even remotely accurate, this kind of capability shows a profound weakness in our defenses. That budget cuts that are scheduled to go into effect because of the irresponsibility of our Congress and the administration would leave us vulnerable. And the same kinds of technologies the Russians have developed in this area have been shared in many ways or purchased by the Chinese. And so you'd have to say that it's not just a situation of the Russian bear being aggressive and the Cold War being back. It's potentially a broader security vulnerability. And on one hand, if it gets broadcast too much, too many bad guys learn of this. Hopefully, it just awakens people to the perils of blind budget cuts and that national defense is still needed.
Exactly. I mean, could this be? I mean, is this? Does this seem like the signal of some kind of conflict with? I mean, especially when Russia's working with China on this, and you discuss the sub's capabilities. They wouldn't. The Kremlin would neither confirm nor deny that they had a sub down there. But how to interpret this? I mean, how do you? I would consider this kind of a hostile act, but I don't want to overreact. But it's very unnerving to think that they had a nuclear powered sub down there, and that we had no idea, and it was down there for a month.
Yeah. Well, of course, the most important thing is to get to the truth. And given the sensitivities involved with the national security implications of this, my guess is we won't get a public version of the truth for quite some time. But hopefully those with responsibility, like the senators and others, will put some serious heat onto the Pentagon and others to come clean on what exactly happened, what do we know. But what we definitely know is that Russia feels it's perfectly fine to be assertive in the current environment. It's been assertive in Syria. It's been assertive in the broader Middle East. It's been assertive on Iran. And it's proving through this story and others that it's willing to be assertive on territorial claims in the Arctic Circle and to come very, very close to our shores. If they can do this with impunity, then it's certainly a signal that others will read, and it doesn't bode well for our security anywhere in the world.
Absolutely, a very unnerving story. And before we wrap up, I wanted to ask you. This is kind of normally I ask you very serious foreign policy issues. This is kind of plays into that, but it's so ridiculous though. This came from this was a Politico piece that discussed how while we had certain congressional officials who were overseas, they were in Israel, and they apparently went skinny dipping, Stephen, in the Dead Sea, and this is apparently created quite a stir. Are you familiar with the story?
Unfortunately, I am familiar with this story.
I'm so sorry. I know. I'm so sorry. But no, it's so ridiculous. It's a deflection. I mean, we both know that this is a deflection. But the way that we're seeing this spun from the left is that somehow this is going to have an adverse effect on our relations with Israel. What do you make of this? I just think if they were there on official business, they probably shouldn't have done that. It's not the best thing to do to your host country. But if they were, which it appears they were there on official business, but is it really as severe as to warrant an FBI investigation and calls that it's had this negative impact on our relations with Israel? I would think the 67 borders remark from the administration would have done that.
Well, and this event took place some time ago, and so whatever implications there were going to be for the relationship with Israel have been absorbed. But you have to say, in seriousness, I am on one level absolutely disgusted with people who think that they can run for office and it's just some giant frat party and they can behave in ways that I would beat the tar out of them if they were doing this around my children.
Right.
And so how dare you come back to me and ask for a vote? So on one level, I dare any of these guys to step into a town hall where fathers are trying to tell their kids how to behave in public, and these guys do it on the taxpayer dime overseas in the Holy Land. So, to me, it's pretty bad stuff.
Yeah,
but it's mostly just that kind of arrogance and attitude. And frankly, it's the kind of thing that the Tea Party lit a fire under a lot of our elected office holders, Republican and Democrat. And this kind of thing proves that fire can't go out.
Exactly. Stephen Yates with the D.C. International Advisory. Stephen, we so appreciate your sane and reasoned perspective on all foreign policy issues. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Dana. Take care.
It's good to talk to you. Thanks again.